So, may I have the pleasure in calling up the next speakers for the next panel, which is the leadership session on the Bengal-Northeast Growth Axis, Pathways to Regional Prosperity. So, may I first request our chairperson of the session and moderator, Professor Dr. Ajita Roy Chaudhary. Professor Roy Chaudhary is an Professor Emeritus and Head of the Department of Economics at Adams University, and he also holds the chair for our BCCI's Economic Affairs Committee's chairperson. Next, I would request Ms. Nidhi Jain, General Manager East of Hindustan Unilever Limited, to please come up. Request Dr. Rajat Kathuria, Dean, School of Humanities and School Social Sciences, Professor Economics, Shiv Nadar Institution of Feminist. And Ms. Mandakini Kaul, Regional Coordinator of South Asia Regional Integration and Engagement of World Bank. Just to inform the audiences that Ms. Kaul and Dr. Kathuria has flown down from Delhi for this conclave. And we can have a round of applause for the panelists, and then we can start the proceedings. Over to you, sir.
Well, good morning, everybody. In fact, this is a very interesting session because we have the East, how we should really take the advantage of the growing East Asia, Southeast Asia, and then linking Bengal and the Northeast. Now, we are running a little bit late. So, what I will do, maybe in the first round, you could speak about 7 minutes or 8 minutes, if that is possible. And then we can have a round of discussion. Just to give some kind of a preamble, everything starts with something. The whole thing, if we can look at it, there is one perspective is the integration. There is a growing sense of regional integration, especially if we look at this BIMSTEC or the so-called eastern side and the East Asia, maybe more integration with the ASEAN countries, a growth center, so to say, and how feasible it is. How can India gain from this? In what sense we can be a profitable partner to this regional integration? And then how we can bring this Bengal or East Asia and East India and Northeast into this. Then there is this whole question that when we integrate, we must note that India, no doubt, has the fastest growing or the most important thing where India has succeeded, perhaps is the services sector. As you have seen in the last quarter, India's service export has outshined the manufactured or the goods export. It's a remarkable thing. The service export is more than goods export. Never happened in the history of India, but it did. Now, manufacturing has a very important role in this whole scenario because the powerhouse of manufacturing is the East Asia, so to say. And if you look at the ASEAN +3, so to say, it's a powerhouse in manufacturing. And as we can say, after all, the service growth is not hanging in the air. A large part of demand of the service sector emanates from the manufacturing sector itself. So what's the possibility of the manufacturing sector growth in this region, which will propel the services sector too? So we have to have some kind of integrated development of so many kinds of services with the manufacturing activities to really take the comparative advantage, if we at all have something in the services sector, along with the manufacturing growth. And we will have something here to learn from this very learned panel. And then we have this whole scenario, then when trade picks up, we have some kind of a linkage effect. And from there, we have a number of things which happens. One of them is the economic corridor. A trade gives rise to some kind of economic corridor. And where exactly the Bengal and Northeast can be positioned in that if we can develop economic corridors, that will be wonderful in all sense of the term. And we will learn something about that too from our panelists. So without spending much time, I will invite our first panelist, Dr. Mondakini, to speak for about, say, 7 minutes. And I guess she will speak more about the possibility of regional integration along with some kind of a trade aspect. I guess so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you. It's a great honor and privilege to be here today at the Bengal Chamber. We've been hearing in the morning session about its illustrious past, but it's also very interesting, and I'm delighted that you're also looking towards the future. And together with the Rising Asia Foundation, how you're looking at ways in which regional cooperation, regional integration can be leveraged to take forward economic growth and development. My remarks today will be organized around three areas. First, I will talk a little bit about why regional connectivity, why regional cooperation is important. Why should we even do that? I will then talk a little bit about the World Bank's regional cooperation program, because that's the team that I work with, that's the area that I lead. And finally, just to end with a few priority actions that I will put forward for your consideration in terms of next steps. Now, in terms of regional cooperation, one of the things that we've been seeing in India is, given its size, its economy, its strategic location, that increasingly both global integration, but specifically regional integration within South Asia, with Southeast Asia, with BIMSTEC has become very important in the discourse that we are having in the country. We also see that opportunities for regional trade, for regional integration have been increasing. Whether you look at the neighborhood first policy, you look at the Act East policy, there are several other policies that we see where India has increasingly been taking a leadership role in terms of cooperation with the neighborhood. And of course, I think the 2023 presidency of the G20 was a great opportunity for India to demonstrate how it can work with other countries in the neighborhood, but also more broadly with the global south to take forward this work. So this is the context in which we are here today. And of course, when we talk about the Northeast, I know that there are representatives here both from Bengal and the Northeast, so I don't need to explain the unique and significant part of the country, the distinct geographical features. But what I will say is that for the Northeast of India's growth and development aspirations, the benefits that will accrue from seamless regional connectivity cannot be overstated. And this is an area on which the World Bank has done significant amount of work and research. And when we talk about regional connectivity, we are looking at three types of connectivity. The first is connectivity within the region. So we are looking at connectivity within the Northeast region. And we know that this is below the country average, below the national average. I have data from 2021 from the Leeds Index, which shows that compared to similar clusters, the Northeast tends to have lower connectivity. The second kind of connectivity we are looking at is, of course, between the Northeast of India and the rest of India. So it's the Siliguri corridor. We already know that, for instance, if a truck has to travel from Agartala to Kolkata, it has to go through 1,600 kilometers. If it were able to go through Bangladesh to Kolkata, this would reduce to about 450 kilometers. If it could go directly to a port in Bangladesh, it would be about 200 kilometers. So that's the kind of connectivity we are looking at. The third, of course, is this whole that when you're able to connect with other countries in the neighborhood. The motor vehicles agreement that you may have heard of, which is between Bangladesh, India, and Nepal, is a significant step towards enhancing regional connectivity and unlocking trade as an engine for the Northeast. We've done some research on this, and there is a very interesting World Bank report called Connecting to Thrive, which I would encourage you all to have a look at, which shows that if there were seamless connectivity between Bangladesh and India, which means trucks and cars could go through any transit route, there were seamless trade facilitation and all the commensurate systems that need to be in place along with that. There could be benefits we've estimated with national incomes rising as much as about 8% for India and as much as 17% for Bangladesh. Much of these gains will in fact accrue to the Northeast states. And in particular, I think the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram, and Tripura in particular stand to gain from this kind of regional connectivity, which could really take advantage of the strategic location of this region, as well as the economic activity that these states could then generate. Reduction of transport and logistics costs, as we can, I think this came up in the first session as well, the importance of logistics. But being the World Bank, we always estimate what could be the benefits if there was a reduction in transportation and logistics cost. And our estimation is that it could lead to a reduction in costs of between 8 to 15%, could increase incomes as much as 30% for this region. So this is to say that all of this is not good to have, but in fact is important to have. These are some basic parameters, these are some basic systems that if they are in place, they actually could have a very direct and clear economic benefit. And the second part of this connectivity, even as we are looking at trade facilitation, and I'm sure that speakers after me, Dr. Kathuria, we have two Dr. Kathurias here today, and I think they'll both be talking more about trade, so I won't get into that data. But I will talk a little bit also about multimodal connectivity. And so when we are talking about connectivity, it's not just roads, but of course there is also the whole area of inland waterways. There's also the railway system. We know traditionally that there have been rail links, inland waterway links in this region that have now not necessarily continued. And so imagine an eastern waterway grid, if you will, which could then connect not just the states which are on the waterways, but also then provides last mile service to other states, to other regions. And again, an integrated water resources management strategy. This is something that we've been looking at. This would cover the Brahmaputra, the Jamuna River basin. So again, multimodal connectivity is what we are looking at. Now, an important area in all of this is, and I said in the beginning, is why regional connectivity? Why should we even bother about the region? And one of the things that we've seen is that regional agreements can further open countries to trade when they go beyond tariff and improve trade facilitation and also address new issues such as digital trade and when membership is broadened. And I think the most obvious example of this is the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCTA, which was adopted in 2020 and covers 54 countries, which covers 1.3 billion people. And again, in this, it is estimated that it has the potential to raise incomes by 9% and lift 50 million people out of extreme poverty. So in this context, let me very quickly now turn to what the World Bank is doing. So the World Bank has a very strong country presence in India. They have, I'm sure you've heard of World Bank operations in West Bengal in the Northeast. But today I represent the regional cooperation program of the World Bank, which looks at South Asia as a whole. And our program looking at regional cooperation began in the year 2010. And our approach is called the RICE approach, which stands for Regional Integration, Cooperation, and Engagement. The reason for that is that when you look at South Asia, some countries will potentially engage with each other. If we are lucky, some countries will cooperate with each other. And I think integration is a little further away at the moment. So we are open in terms of, and I think someone mentioned ASEAN, BIMSTEC. So we are very flexible in the way we take forward our programs. We are happy at the moment, for instance, we work a lot with the BBIN countries. We have a separate program in the western part of South Asia. But just to say that for us, where we see opportunities for cooperation, where we see there are benefits, we are happy to support those programs. And I think there are significant programs that we have on trade, on, of course, connectivity, on digital. There's also a whole side looking at climate change, resilience. So let me now conclude. I was ready to conclude. So let me now conclude by proffering 3 concrete steps to take forward as you spend the rest of the day to discuss and consider. So I would say, based on our lessons of experience, based on our analytics, based on the extensive research that we have been doing, and also the partnerships that we have with other development partners, with governments, with civil society, the northeast of India, the northern part, and the eastern part of India could benefit from three specific ways of linkages and taking forward the work. The first, of course, is investing in the development of multimodal connectivity, infrastructure, and logistics, which will lead to faster, cheaper, and more environmentally friendly freight and passenger movement. I think that's absolutely the first step. The second, very important, is improving trade efficiency by streamlining cross-border movement, reducing cost, and looking at ways in which systems can be digitized, in which systems can be the same across both sides of the border, and how we can leverage the fact that we have countries in the neighborhood who could help with taking forward some of this economic growth. And finally, I think one thing I didn't say enough about is the whole area of regional value chains of the Northeast, where we have products like fruit, vegetables, spices, and bamboo, which could also lead to inclusive employment opportunities. I'll stop here, but normally when I end, I also say one final thing, which is related to gender. So with the permission of the chair, I'm going to spend 1 more minute on that. People who have heard me before will hear me say that. Which is that the World Bank, when we look at economic growth, when we look at trade opportunities, we always look at inclusive growth and trade opportunities. Female labor participation is amongst the lowest in South Asia. Women in business, women in entrepreneurship are amongst the lowest in South Asia. And so as we take forward these policies, as we take forward our work, please do keep in mind that whatever work we do should equally benefit men and women of the Northeast, of the Eastern sub-region and South Asia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paul. In fact, connectivity is a $64 question or $1, whatever you say. It's a very important thing and a very difficult thing, especially in the Northeastern region, to increase the kind of connectivity we are saying, multimodal connectivity. One of the of success in the region. You talked about inclusive growth. All of us long for an inclusive growth for our future generation as well, not only for us, and that's very important. With this, I move on to the next speaker, Ms. Nidhi Jain. She is the General Manager East of Hindustan Unilever Limited, and I guess you will speak more about a little bit of prospect of manufacturing, how it can be flourished, how it can integrate the region. Thank you. 7 minutes, if you can confine yourself.
Absolutely. Efficient, that way. So first of all, let me thank the BCCI and the Rising Asia for conducting this entire event, whereby we are discussing the pathways of regional prosperity, which is linked to Bengal as well as Northeast. Now, when I talk about growth and manufacturing sector, they are well integrated. The moment manufacturing sector enters into any region, it by default brings growth. Why? Because first, it gives direct employment to so many people. And not only that, when the manufacturing sector comes, there is by default increase in the income levels, general living standards. With that, other industries also get attracted, construction, road, housing, and also the services. Because as the income level rises, then only you start to consume the services. And not only this, a lot of social investment also come into those areas. We heard Mr. Mitra speaking in the morning that how this area is developing the human capital for the long-term growth. Now, if I were to talk about example from my own organization, Hindustan Unilever, which is more than 90 years old in this country as an organization, and the brands have been even longer here. We started our operations in Northeast with the tea gardens and supplying some of the most loved brands like Lipton, Brook Bond, Red Label, Taj Mahal, whichever tea you drink. Some of the most loved tea comes from the Northeast of this country. By the way, some of our most initial factories were also set up in Bengal. But that was not sufficient. If we go back in 2001, when Northeast was infected by the insurgent, it was a very big problem. Then Hindustan Unilever and some other industries also came along with the government. So with the support of government, we set up our first factory in 2001 in the tea city of Dumduma. And that's where we started our journey of manufacturing, of industry in the northeast of the region. Now, not only 2001, until recently, we have been expanding this facility. Today, we have more than 4 units in that region, in Northeast. And the production which happens there is not only consumed in Northeast, it is sent all across the country. We produce 75,000 tons of FMCG products every year in Northeast, in the Dumduma city of the Northeast of Assam. This is 5 billion units of most beloved brands like Dove, Vaseline, Glow and Lovely, Close Up. Some of these brands, the national supply happens from Northeast. And just guess what? What did it do to the region? Today, in the factory, there are 1,300 people who are directly employed. That looks small for such a large region, and we know the population of the whole region is about 4.5 crore. But that's not all. When we set up factory, a lot of our suppliers also come in there. And with those suppliers, the contract manufacturers, the job workers, the warehousing management, there are more than 3,000 people employed in and around that factory. But that's not sufficient for us, for the growth. We also have our distribution and the trade set up in the entire region. We have more than 150 distributors who work in the entire Northeast. And those distributors employ another 3,000, more than 3,000 people as salesmen, merchandiser, distribution setup, like, for supplying those goods in the entire Northeast region. That's not also enough. We also have more than 3,000, and to point with which Ms. Kaul mentioned here, we have a program called Shakti, which is about rural entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs who supply the goods of HUL, of Hindustan Unilever in those villages, which not only provide them the self-esteem, but also the additional income for themselves and their family. That's how you upgrade the living standard of the entire society. And as a responsible manufacturer, it's not just about business. Business is very important. But at the same time, as a responsible company, we also invest in the social activities. What are these social activities? To start with, we have got mobile medical services. And in the last few years, people have sweared by the support which these services gave, especially during COVID. More than 3.69 lakh people got services of these medical services, mobile medical vans, through more than 7,000 camps in Northeast. We also support a foundation called, or a school called Ankur, which is for differently abled people. And again, this school has enabled educationally as well as vocationally more than 350 kids who are differently abled when it comes to physical and cognitive ability and are from underprivileged background. Not only this, in the sense, in the spirit of developing the skills, livelihood of people, we have recently set up an ITI with one of our partner, LLF, whereby we have set up this ITI, which is equipped with world-class laboratories, equipments, the auditoriums, the library, whatever an ITI or a good educational system should have to upgrade or upskill the young people with the skill sets with which they can get employment. And as we speak, today also more than 100 kids are getting trained, vocationally trained, which will make them good for employment after this. So as you see, it's, you set up one manufacturing sector and it just triggers the virtuous cycle of growth, virtuous cycle of the entire region. But this is not sufficient. As Ms. Kaul also mentioned about, the connectivity, there are periods during monsoon when the key road or the key infrastructure get impacted because of the floods, because of the landslide. And if we develop further along with the government, the infrastructure of this area, more and more industries, manufacturing companies will come and set up in this area. Again, this is not sufficient because if we see today,
You have
Bengal,
one more minute, please.
Yes, this is my last statement. For all of you to reflect and ponder upon, that today Bengal and Northeast is under-indexed when it comes to per capita income as well as consumption, which means there is enough for us to develop in this region. With that thought, I'll pause here and let you reflect that how together we can make this region even more prosperous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jain. It's all stories of hope from the very well-known organization, Hindustan Labour. What you are doing, perhaps this can have a spread effect on other industries too. With this, let's go to the last but not the least, as we always say, Dr. Kathuria, Rajat Kathuria, Dean, School of Humanities, Social Sciences, Professor Economics, Chief another institution of eminence. So, Dr. Kathuria, give the punchline.
I hope. Thank you, Professor Raichodhuri. It's absolutely a pleasure to be here and to speak here for several reasons. And let me sort of enumerate those reasons. There are at least two reasons why I'm delighted to be here. Both have been mentioned, but I'm going to reiterate them. One, of course, thank you to Rising Asia Foundation and BCCI for inviting me. You know, I studied in Calcutta I won't tell you the years, but it was long ago. I used to go to school in Park Street and then, Loudon Street. I had two schools. And I used to travel through Park Street. And every day when I used to cross Park Street, Chaurangi, there were flags, there were marches with the sickle and star flag. Ami kaj korbona, 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 ami kaj korbona. You know, that was the image of Calcutta. And what the picture that Dr. Amit Mitra presented this morning was fascinatingly different. And I'll have something to say about how this can be leveraged. The second reason why I'm really happy to be here is what Mandakini said. I think I've been persuaded enough over the last few years as an economist to feel that, having gender balance at every level, including in this panel, which is why I'm so delighted, but having gender balance in the economy, at home, in corporates, provides a boost to GDP. And there's several sort of motivating research to suggest that it is indeed the case. What the reasons are, that's what the data shows. What the reasons are, probably a psychologist would be better placed to reflect on. But that is indeed the case for most economies. And India's GDP, if there was gender balance in the workforce, India's GDP would be substantially, significantly higher. And our female labor force participation rate has plummeted to very low levels. So, I have the task of trying to, Mandakini and Nidhi have said exactly what I wanted to say on regional connectivity. So I'll try and add some sort of motivation to what Mandakini said. She's already given the spillover benefits, and sort of let me add to that. And I'll add a little bit of digital connectivity and try and sort of then bring trade into the picture and how India, and especially the Northeast, including Bengal, can benefit from increasing multimodal connectivity and efficiencies as a result that would be created, but also as a result of digital connectivity. And I think digital connectivity and physical connectivity, if they are able to go together, they would the bang for the buck will be much more. In a sense, if we were to use digital connectivity as a force multiplier, it would add the bang. Whatever Mandakini has said, you can sort of scale that up if you have better digital connectivity. I guess she also sort of, at the back of her presentation, was the fact that when you're talking about trade efficiency, you're looking to use digital and technology. And what Mr. Mitra was saying in the morning also, using the example of Solo's production function, what adds to countries' GDP growth is technology and innovation at the end of the day, not labor and capital, but it's innovation and productivity. So that productivity as a result of digital would add a bang to the buck or be the force multiplier of physical connectivity. And that's, I think, what Bengal can do, what the Northeast can do. It's not that it will come at the expense of physical connectivity, but it has to go hand in hand. And I'll give you examples from some of the work that I did when I was working in this area. Now I've moved to a university, so I don't do as much, policy work. But when I used to, there were some significant impacts of digital connectivity, and I'll give you some numbers. So we know that, this great statement that John F. Kennedy made in the 60s, America doesn't have good roads because it is rich. It is rich because it has good roads. And that was, the United States investment in roads. And roads is just a metaphor for all kinds of connectivity, not just road connectivity, but a metaphor for all kinds of connectivity. And that was what gave United States this wonderful network of roads, which is now crumbling. But at that time, it gave huge impacts and boost to GDP. And digital connectivity similarly, the World Bank, Mandakini will know this, Sanjay, my brother, who spent a lifetime in the World Bank would know this. The World Bank's work shows that 10% increase in broadband connectivity. In India, it leads to 3% increase in GDP, but in the rest of the world, it leads to 1.5, 1.8% increase in GDP, which means that if you have improved broadband connectivity, data connectivity, mobile connectivity, whatever, increased data flows, then it will add. So you add digital connectivity to physical connectivity, and you will get a bigger bang for the buck, i.e. it will be a force multiplier. Just so that you can wrap your sort of minds around this idea, as I was saying, some research that we did amongst, let's say, farmers in UP and in parts of Bihar and Orissa, when sort of mobile connectivity was beginning to happen. And there's some very good work by Robert Jensen of Harvard in Kerala. So what happened as a result of mobile connectivity to farmers? Because the information gaps between prices prevailing in different markets was able to be sort of, if not eliminated, it was reduced. But farmers was told us when our team went to survey them, are you using mobiles to determine what the prices are, to sell your produce at the best possible mandi? They said, look, we know what the prices are, but the roads are not, we don't have roads to access those markets. It's difficult. The transactions costs of accessing those markets are very high. So it's all good to say that you'll have mobile connectivity. And when you can, make this more sophisticated argument, but the argument is that digital connectivity by itself will overcome your infrastructure gaps, but will not be able to complete substitute for physical infrastructure. And today you can't just talk about physical infrastructure, you will have to talk about digital infrastructure, and trade facilitation today is all about digital. So I think where West Bengal and the Northeast can gain in, as just reinforcing what Nidhi has, what Mandakini has said, is to double down on infrastructure growth, infrastructure, multimodal connectivity, and the market won't do it. Like in the morning, there were sort of eloquent speeches about in Bengal and in the Northeast. Government has provided the sort of systems, the facilities for private sector to come in, and private sector creates barriers to entry. Obviously, they will create barriers to entry. That's what they will not create barriers to entry. They would not want barriers to entry when they're outside. They will want entry to be free. But once they are inside, they will obviously create barriers to entry. But the government has to see that and to try and create opportunities so that entry becomes easier. But entry will not become easier until the government has provided that infrastructure, and the market is not, PPPs, will succeed to an extent, but they haven't. But the government will have to do the connectivity. And the digital connectivity, BharatNet, etc., is happening. The private sector is also investing. But this is absolutely essential. Without both physical and digital connectivity, the region will become, as Mr. Mitra was saying, it will, it has the advantage of being sort of the smallest in terms of GDP. So the laws of arithmetic, I'm not sort of undermining what is being said, but the laws of arithmetic means that growth will shift, the growth poles will shift, but to sort of do much more than what the market by itself will do, you will have to attract that investment. And how do you attract that investment? And these last couple of points. How do you attract that investment? As I said, you would want to invest in all kinds of infrastructure. And two, is not wait for government of India to sign free trade agreements and India signing free trade. We know how, Mandakini mentioned this, it's been difficult for India to sign free trade agreements, and for reasons that I will not get into immediately here. But there are various reasons why India stays away from RCEP. India is fearful of China. We haven't, some of the existing free trade agreements give a current account deficit. We run current account surpluses with countries that don't have free trade agreements. So we've got a current account surplus with United States. We've got a current account surplus with EU. We have a current account deficit with Japan, current account deficit with ASEAN, a current account deficit with Korea. So government looks at this data and says, it's a bad idea to have free trade agreement. Now, I mean, I'm of course making a caricature of this argument, but that's not true. I mean, one has to go into nuances of that. But given that the government is reluctant or hesitant to get into free trade agreements, I think Northeast, Bengal, they should sort of try and integrate. Of course, when we did GST, we signed a free, I'm concluding. When we did GST, we signed a free trade agreement amongst ourselves, right, within India. So that was a great thing. And as we were saying, the logistics cost fell down quite significantly. But we also need to do agreements, if not at the country level, we can do agreements at the level of the region, so that, you know, trade will have spillover effects, trade will have externalities, it will have benefits. So rather than wait for India to sign agreements, Northeast can sort of sign agreements with or have, and there are in place, it's not that they are not in place, but various infrastructure and geopolitical reasons have prevented us from leveraging those completely. And, you know, all of you know the kind of agreements that we have. We have BIMSTEC, we have BBIN, we have Kaladan, we have so many trilateral highways, TMT, etc. So there's several, and all of them haven't been sort of reached their true potential. But I think we should double down on that as a region rather than wait for the country, because investments, policies, manufacturing all happen at the level of the state, at the level of the district, rather than at the level of the country. So country will set broad policies, but investments will happen there. So I think my message to Mr. Mitra, or my message to government of West Bengal and the Northeast would be to double down on creating, you've done wonderfully in terms of social infrastructure, and Amartya Sen has been saying this for several years, and so I was really happy to hear what Mr. Mitra said in the morning, doubling down on human capital, because ultimately what will drive economic growth in a sustainable and inclusive manner will be investments in social infrastructure, including health and education, and that's happening. But physical infrastructure is also a necessity, and with this, I think private sector necessarily will be attracted. But waiting for the market to do it will be a long haul. So build the infrastructure. If you build, they will come. As Shiv Nadar used to say in the university that I am in now, he said, I'll build the university and people will come. And that's what happened. Build it and they will come. And lots of people have come to Shiv Nadar University. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kathuria. And before I have about 5 minutes discussion, because we are running late and Ms. Kaul has to leave. She has a flight to catch. Just one thing. We are in education sector, so this digital connectivity has given rise to students playing games during their study times, and they are going too much in ChatGPT, not knowing, and they're discovering new theories from ChatGPT which we never heard. So productivity might not be rising for some of them, so we must be very careful about it. But what you said is absolutely right. I would have liked to hear something more about supply chain. What's the prospect of supply chain and economic corridor? Perhaps the time is too short for that. And these are the two very important, prospects for them. Well, just 5 minutes. And so if you can identify and ask whom you are asking the question, very pointed, focused questions so that they can answer. Yes, please.
My work is also in gender and women's studies. So to both you and Rajat, my question would be, what exactly can be done to incorporate very simple things, as we have seen in the First Nations in Canada, the way to incorporate them into the mainstream work environment, increase productivity, is to get precious for children. So, in those lines, has the World Bank or has Rajat in his own administration, is there anything that you can suggest that governments or corporates can start to do?
So let me go first and then. So one is, as Rajat said, there's a ton of research out there. So we know at the theoretical level what lots of things. But yes, I'll say two things. The first is childcare always is what is the most important thing. I have a young son. I'm catching the flight back because I need to be back because the husband's traveling. So it is what it is. But in terms of what can governments do, so one of the things we've done, for example, is that we were supporting an inland waterways project in one of the states here. And it seems that women weren't using waterways enough as compared to men. So we did a study to understand what the reason was. So as I said, try and do everything that benefits men and women equally. And what came out is that the port, the where you access the boat, basically over there, it wasn't, there was no waiting rooms, there was no lighting, and there were no toilets. So essentially, women did not feel safe. Women with children were not able to get onto those boats. It was very basic. It was very rudimentary. So I think as you plan, design, think of infrastructure, digital systems, always think of, can all segments of society use that? And I think sometimes it's as simple as that. It's not always rocket science. Yep.
Hello.
Well,
One more.
I just persuaded Rajat just to have maybe a variety of couple of more
Yeah.
questions. Yes, please.
Yeah, I have two questions. One to
Have
Mandakini.
one question so that, just one question.
Uh-huh.
One question.
Because to Mandakini then, this development of the Northeast is very much pivotal with Bangladesh, this multimodal. Now with this condition in Bangladesh, where do you have any plan B? How to develop that? Because it's for a long haul.
Just have your opinion.
So this is a transition, a period of transition. Surely it will become more difficult, and one will have to have the plan B has anyway been operating. The de facto is the plan B. Very little trade happens through Bangladesh. So, but I think it will the economic benefits sort of will be contingent on the geopolitical negotiations that happen between the two countries, and absolutely essential for that to happen. Otherwise, Pakistan is a great route to access Central Asia, but that hasn't happened, and we've had to circumvent that. As Sanjay will tell you, that India's trade with Pakistan happens more through Dubai. So, there is a plan B in operation. So, in some sense, the plan B is already there, but plan A would be to negotiate so that we can have better multimodal connectivity, not only with Bangladesh, but also with Myanmar.
Actually, I'm going to quickly add to that to say that if there's one constant in South Asia, it is that nothing is constant and the situation evolves continuously. So one of the things we've learned to be is be agile and be opportunistic. So there are times when countries don't engage, there are times when countries do engage. So have systems in place, and very often it's actually working at the ground level, but not necessarily at the higher level. So I would say, indeed, as Rajat said, there's a plan A, plan B, but continue to remain to be engaged. That's the way that we have seen the region works.
So don't sleep, be on your feet always. That's the message. Last question. Anybody has? Yes.
It's, I'm Probir Banerjee. It's not a question, it's more of an observation. We've been talking about
Just focused question because we don't have time.
Just an observation, sir. I urge everybody in this room to please also look at ecological connectivity. We are sitting on the foothills of the third pole. If those 46,000 glaciers start melting, we will not need any connectivity. Thank you.
I mean, this is observation, very important observation. I don't think we agree. I think all of us do agree. Yes, please.
Question to Ms. Nidhi Jain. This is Raja Chatterjee from a Wildlife Conservation Society. However, it might sound a bit weird. Thing is, could HUL think about assisting the Anganwadi centers as a model in various areas of Bengal? Because quite often we come to know that stuff of the food that's distributed among the children are just not below the standard. It's should not be given at all.
We got your question. So,
So
Nidhi, if you can
could
just...
HUL
Yeah,
find out
the
some
question
areas?
is very clear. And Nidhi, please, if you can answer.
Thank you, sir. Very valid suggestion. And as an organization, we spend a lot of time as well as resources, what we call CSR or corporate social responsibility. As an organization, we have called out 4 specific areas where we want to invest because each one of sitting in this room will have strong bonding or the strong feeling or the connect with a particular purpose. But to get the money really invested and make some outcome out of it, it's very important we keep our focuses very, very clear. So livelihood is definitely one of our key priority. Clean water is definitely one of the key priority. Very valid suggestion. We do interact, we do engage with many a times government, Anganwadi workers at a local level to support whatever we can support. But as an organization, there are 4 key CSR initiatives where we invest our money so that we can get some social return on it. Like because you invest significant money in one particular area, then only you see anything changes.
Okay, you have a comment to make.
Thank
Yes,
you.
This last comment
yes,
and
yes,
question
Jiro
all combined.
Kodera Embassy of Japan, and thank you very much. And I'm impressed by the many speakers talking about digital connectivity. And I'd like to ask you a question to the World Bank. Thank you. And Japan is thinking of supporting semiconductor industry in the future. So Tata Corporation invest in that. 2 facilities in Gujarat and 1 facility in Assam. This is a great news. And is there any plan for World Bank to support these semiconductor industries? Thank you.
Thank you, Jiro. I think we'll have this conversation offline and discuss further. Thanks.
You said anything?
I wanted to sort of respond to the question that you had raised. I don't know whether the World Bank, but the government of India is supporting semiconductor, and government of India has put in $2 billion in support of the semiconductor industry and Tata. And so I think the ecosystem is being created for at least the lower end chips within the country. I wanted to respond to Professor Roy Chaudhary's question about regional value chains and economic corridors. And I think in the morning it was mentioned that India can benefit from China plus one or the diversification away from China. Decoupling from China, by the way, can never happen. It's impossible, but diversification could happen. But Vietnam, Cambodia, other countries have benefited more than India. India can benefit, the Northeast can benefit Bengal so most of trade today takes place between lead firm and the component manufacturers, you link it to supply chain. You need a lead firm in the region. Whatever that lead, it could be IKEA, it could be semiconductor, it could be Hindustan Lever, it could be, you need a lead firm to be sort of entrenched, embedded in this region. And I know some of the work that we had done on food processing, which was mentioned in the morning, and a lot of companies who were in food processing did not want to come and set up shop in the Middle East, despite the supply of fruits here, because they thought they wouldn't be able to get the scale that was necessary to be able to set up that industry, because the states were not cooperating with one another. So if states cooperate, including Bengal, and you're able to get a lead firm, whether it's food processing, then I think the regional value chains can happen. Of course, government of India will have to play a role in terms of rationalizing tariffs and not increase customs duties in every budget and make it disincentive for things to happen. But be that as it may, I think a lead firm, if it comes to help create regional value chains.
Thank you. all my fellow panelists. Wonderful discussion. And during lunchtime, we will have more, very illuminative discussions, I think. Okay, over, Sumit.
Thank you. Wonderful indeed. Can we have a good round of applause for them? Thanks so much. Let's do the mementos then. Professor Dr. Roy Chaudhary, I would request you to kindly hand over the memento to Ms. Mandakini Kaul first. We'll try and rejuvenate your energy, but for the time being, can I request you to clap a little bit louder? Next to Dr. Rajat Kathuria. Yes, sir. You to do all the honors. And of course to Ms. Nidhi Jain. Okay. Can I request Mr. Aniruddha Lahiri to please come up on the dais? Yes, sir. So, a memento to be presented to Dr. Roy Chaudhary.
Oh, yes.
Can we have a group photograph, please, quickly?